and welcome to Behind the Seams, a monthly video series where our staff shares sewing tips, easy how-tos, and more. I'm your host, Lindsay Mayland. We have a great show ahead of us today covering a wide variety of topics, so we hope you enjoy it. I'm so excited to share a few products that I love with you. This time of year always has me thinking about gifts to give the quilters in my life and also the fun things I want to see in my own stocking this year. So first up is this beautiful jewelry set from artist Jessica Waterman. So it comes with a necklace and a matching pair of earrings. There are a variety of color palettes and designs available, and there are some options to buy the earrings or necklace separate if you prefer. It's such a fun way to add a quilty touch to any outfit, and the craftsmanship is just amazing. Next up is this quilt block candle from Soap Escape. I just love lighting candles, especially in the dark months of winter. It just makes any space seem so cozy. So these candles are 3-inch square, and they're made of beeswax and soy. And you can customize your candle as you'd like. So you pick from a few different quilt block designs and choose the scent. And then the scent corresponds with the color of the candle. And they have some seasonal scents available too, and they just smell so divine. It's almost too pretty to burn. Who doesn't love to warm up on a cold night with a mug of hot chocolate or cider? Even better when you can drink out of a fun tumbler that says, "Dear Santa, please send fabric." So this tumbler is 12 ounces and insulated, and it's made out of stainless steel so you can enjoy hot or cold beverages. The best part is the lid closes tight so that you can enjoy this in your sewing room without being worried about spilling on your project. Enamel pins are so fun to collect. We love those illustrated by Justine Gilbuena. She has a variety of pin designs, including a tomato pin cushion, a sewing machine, a scissors, and more. So you can add them to clothing or accessories, or display them on a board in your sewing room. They're really high quality pins, and you get to choose the pin backing, either a rubber back or a metal locking clasp. And lastly, I love this notepad from Shiny Shrimp. I just love a good to-do list, especially when I get busy during the holidays. And this notepad features a cute penguin sitting at the sewing machine. And the notepad says, "So much to do, so little time." How cute. So you can choose from 2 colors or whether or not you want a magnetic backing on it. So we'll link to all of these products in the video description so you can shop if you're interested. Now I'm here with Doris to share some of our recent magazines.
Yes, this month the December issue of American Patchwork and Quilting and the winter issue of Quilts More came out.
So even though we've been working on these issues since spring, having them out in the world makes it feel like the holidays are finally here.
Definitely. Both issues are full of fun seasonal ideas, so let's take a look at the projects in American Patchwork and Quilting first.
We hope you grab this issue on newsstands if you see it. I know I personally have that red and white tree quilt on my list to make. It's just so festive. What about you, Doris?
I always struggle to just choose one, but I know for certain I'm going to make the embroidered countdown to Christmas for a niece who is going to be super excited to keep it updated every day. And Christmas Garland, the cover quilt, is near the top of my list for sure.
Now let's look at the projects in Quilts More.
This issue has so many great ideas for smaller projects, which are sometimes easier to tackle and accomplish as the end of the year gets more and more busy. On my list to make are some drawstring gift bags from the Skill Builder feature and a throw size version of Merry Meeting using the optional size chart we've included.
And I just love the Make a Display tree wall quilt. I think it would be so fun to decorate it using embroidery stitches, sequins, or even some small pom-poms to kind of dress it up for the holidays.
That's a great idea. These magazines are filled with inspiration for holiday gifts and decor, so we hope you buy a copy on newsstands or at apqshop.com.
Thanks, Doris. Now we're handing things over to Beth, who has some time-saving sewing tips to share.
Today, I'm sharing some time-saving sewing tips. First, I like to look for efficiencies in cutting. So most of the time you have the same size squares you're going to be cutting out of multiple fabrics. You can layer those up and cut them at the same time. So if the squares are going to be sewn together, if you want to save even more time, you can layer your fabrics right sides together, cut them, and then they're already matched up and ready to be sewn. For something like triangle squares where you do have to draw a line on the back, you can still do that with those stacked up together. Just make sure your marking utensil doesn't bleed through to the bottom fabric. If you'd like to do away with drawing those lines altogether, you can use a diagonal seam tape. So this is from Cluck Cluck Sew, and it's a really helpful notion. So it's like a washi tape with these pre-printed lines, and you can use this for triangle squares. So you do need a bit of length here so that your piece can be entirely on the tape so you can line it up. So if you have an extension table, this is a great time to use it. This Baby Lock Chorus did come with one, and so now I have a nice big surface area to use this tape. So when you place this on your machine, you want the red line lined up with your needle, and then just make sure it's straight across the bed of your machine by using a ruler. And then for triangle squares, because that red line is going to be the stitching line, we don't want that on the diagonal. We want it a 1/4 inch away from that. So we're going to line up the points of our square, both points, with this right hand black line. As you sew, just make sure that point is staying lined up with the black line. Then we need to do the second line. So you can move it over to the left hand black line. Again, make sure both points are lined up as you feed it in. And then you have your two stitching lines a 1/2 inch apart, and then you cut on the diagonal and you have your triangle squares ready to press and trim. This tape also works for flying geese units. So this time you are going to line up with the red line because we do want to stitch on that diagonal. If your machine has a laser light like this Baby Lock Chorus does, you can use that in the same way. So that's basically just showing you your stitching line. You can go corner to corner. The length of your laser will determine how big of pieces that you can do with your laser light though. And this works great for stitch and flip blocks and snowball blocks as well. With either of these techniques, it's a good idea to test first and make sure you're getting the accuracy you need. You may need to adjust your needle position or the tape, just depending on how those are turning out. And of course, Chain piecing is always another great way to save time too. You can just line up all of your pieces and sew them right one after another. My last time-saving tip is that you can also trim your units at once too. So I have one square sewn onto my flying geese units here, and I'm going to line up my stitching line with the line on my mat, just as a nice little way to line that up. And then you can line up your stitching line on this one, and then line up that stitching line with the mat, and just kind of stagger them. I don't want these stacked up too much on top of each other because they could shift. So just kind of like lay them all out, and then you can line up your 1/4 inch with your stitching, and then just trim them all at one time. I know these tricks have saved me so much time in my sewing room, especially on those more tedious tasks like drawing lines and trimming.
Thanks, Beth. Great tips. I have a question from a reader we're excited to answer. So this question is from Candace Gillis of Detroit, Michigan. And she says, I love sewing, but between taking care of my family, shopping, cooking, cleaning, and running errands, I barely get time to quilt. How do I carve out more time in my day for me time in my sewing room? So great question, Candace. You're definitely not the only quilter who has trouble making time for themselves and their hobby. So I have 6 ideas for you. First, be prepared. Keep your sewing machine, supplies, and works in progress where they are easily available. That way you can sneak in even just like 5 minutes of sewing between other activities. I love to do this on projects that have repeated units so that I can chain piece blocks or even trim and press multiples of the same unit, like triangle squares, over and over again without needing to read the pattern every time I sit down. Next, add it to your calendar. Block off time for sewing so that you don't overschedule yourself. Let your family and friends know that you're truly unavailable so that you can make progress without interruptions. Maybe you do this once a day for 30 minutes or even once a week for a few hours. You can even join our all-day virtual quilt retreat coming up on December 3rd. So we'll link to those details in the video description. Turn your phone off. The average American spends more than 5 hours on a smartphone per day. It's really easy to get sucked into scrolling through social media to see everyone's photos, but stepping away from your device may free up some time for sewing. I know I recently set limits on my social media usage so that my apps just won't open after a certain amount of usage time. And it's just amazing how much I feel like I'm getting done. Pack a handwork kit. So you can squeeze in handwork while you're traveling in the car, watching TV with the family, sitting in waiting rooms, or while you're waiting for dinner to bake. Like English paper piecing, embroidery, wool projects, hand piecing, those all make great on-the-go sewing projects. I also love to hand bind quilts, but that's not always the easiest to carry along with you. Wake up earlier or stay up later. So try setting your daily alarm 20 minutes earlier than usual to get in some sewing time, or do a little sewing right before bedtime. Sacrificing a bit of sleep for some me time in your sewing room can help you feel refreshed. I'm an early morning person, so I love waking up a little bit earlier to make some progress on a project. It helps me feel like I crossed something off my to-do list even before I've had my morning coffee sometimes. And make time for friends. You can swap out a dinner date for a sewing date. You can make some progress on a project while still catching up with friends and family. And if your friends aren't quilters, maybe they can color, cross-stitch, or even assemble a puzzle while you sew. That way you don't have to sacrifice social time for sewing time. You can do both. We hope these tips help you squeeze a little more sewing time into your schedule each week. Making time to sew is a luxury we all deserve. And if you need a little motivation to sew through the holidays, join our free seasonal sampler quilt along. Each week we're releasing 2 block patterns to make this a throw size quilt. And the blocks are quick to make, they're beginner friendly. And each block really takes less than 30 minutes to make. So the quilt along just started this week, so we'll add all the details to the video description so you can join us. It's a fun way to get a little bit of sewing each week and share your progress with others. And that's it for today's show. Thanks to everyone who watched. We really hope you enjoyed it. And we know we talked through a lot of things today, so in the video description, you can find a link where we'll list all of the patterns, products, resources, and more. So make sure you check that out. We'll see you next month.